Hello, I'm Robert Lennox. I'm new in NINA, and I wanted to talk about some of the work that I've been doing in the last few years. I actually did part of my PhD with NINA starting in 2013, so I've been working with a lot of folks here for many years, and I learned a lot about tracking fish, everything I know, really, from Finn and Ava and Ingebrigt, and I've been working on that ever since, and I wanted to share some of the research that I've been doing in the last few years and some of what I hope to expand on and build on here now that I'm with NINA. So the last 3 years I've been with Norse in Bergen. We've developed some fish tracking work that part of which I'm going to bring to NINA here and expand on. And this is sort of the team we've been working with. We've had a lot of students. Been working on salmon and sea trout a lot all around Western Norway. And tracking fish is very difficult. It's very fun. It's interesting. You jump in the water, you see them, but actually knowing where they go on a day-to-day basis is very challenging because you can't just use a GPS to see where they're going like you can on land. Satellites don't go through water very well, so we use these acoustic tags that ping at a certain frequency. They transmit the data to a receiver, and you can get the individual ID. You can also get information about the temperature, the depth, the acceleration, predation, all sorts of interesting information. So this was drawn by a child, not by me, but very close. You can see the fish is in anesthetic here. It's got a sad face. We take the transmitter, we put it in. This is a student that I have in Bergen, Cecilia. She's very good. This is the cat, Mittens. You can follow her on Instagram. It's Princess Mittens. She's watching some surgeries on these fish in Ireland. Very fun stuff, very exciting. And we have receivers out in all sorts of lakes and fjords and estuaries all around Western Norway, and of course there's some up in Trondheim as well, and we're plugged into these international networks. So the European Tracking Network, vision for sort of all of Europe being able to connect and track different species that are highly migratory, very mobile, can move all around. We can share our data, we can give each other our tag IDs, and Ocean Tracking Network as well, and this is sort of a general map of where Ocean Tracking Network has different coverage around the world. You can see for highly mobile, highly migratory species, collaboration is really important for this, and I've been working a lot with these networks to try to develop collaborations for bigger projects within Norway, within Europe, and internationally as well. And objectives, so it's conservation of threatened systems, trying to understand how species are moving and how their behavior affects their conservation potential. Evidence-based management and planning, so we work a lot with industry and government to identify different strategies and mitigations and how they work. And a species approach to management. I had this ecosystem approach to management before, but John Linnell, very, very compelling, very convincing talk. I ran up here and changed it. So study systems that we have in Western Norway right now, we've been working a lot with these sea trout in Ireland and in Vosso, big salmon in the Vosso River, tracking them with acoustic tags. Spiny dogfish, we have a new project that's just starting. We tagged 10 last week as a pilot project, do some shark research in Western Norway. Wrasse, we've been working on them in a coastal restoration project downtown Bergen. And otters, we've been doing some pilot work on trying to understand how we can get tags onto otters and understand predator-prey dynamics in the context of human-wildlife conflict. But the acoustic telemetry array that we have in Western Norway extends all the way out the Vosso River, tons of receivers in the lake here, Vangsvatnet, receivers in the Lake Evanger, all the way out the fjord into the islands. We're going to put more receivers out here to track our sharks and connect with other researchers to the south as well in Hardanger and to the north as well up here in Trondheim. So species like sharks that we're tagging hopefully will be highly mobile. We have a variety of projects related to this. The Lakes project, this is an Energy X project with hydropower partners looking at how salmonids use lake habitat during their upriver migration, during this downriver smolt migration, and overwintering, and looking at how hydropower is affecting the relationship between salmonids and their lake habitat. Looking at pathogens and climate change, so how pathogens are predicting the movement behavior of sea trout and the migratory tendencies in the context of climate change, so in southern systems and in the north. It's a collaboration with NTNU as well. And the Lost project, this is a new one that we're starting just at the end of this year. It'll be a 4-year project tracking spiny dogfish and habitat compression in the Østerfjord in Western Norway. As the oxygen minimum layer comes up, warmer surface water comes down, the potential habitat for these sharks is getting pinched and potentially moving them more towards conflicts with fisheries and aquaculture. Also working on using telemetry as a tool for restoration, so trying to understand how the movement in in urban habitats is responding to some restoration work in downtown Bergen in the harbor there, trying to restore some of the substrate as well as some of the habitat, tracking sea trout and wrasse and cod around the harbor fronts to understand how they're responding to these measures. Also doing some predator-prey work in Sunnmøre with radio tagging. These otters are eating a lot of these salmon, local conflicts with the people. Lena, our student here, is tracking the fish. We're putting radio tags in with temperature loggers, and when we find the fish on land, we can get the radio logger. We can find the radio logger, get the temperature sensor, and see when the fish has been eaten, and try to understand what predictors are driving these relationships. And then another project using telemetry to understand depth responses of fish to supersaturation in regulated rivers. And a new one as well, Sharks on the Move, collaboration with IMR, up in Tromsø, led by Claudia Jung, spiny dogfish tagging, some porbeagle shark, and basking shark work along the coast to model and predict how their movements respond. So lots of different work on this, looking at the effects of tags on the depth use of smolts to see if there are tag effects that need to be considered when doing this work. Validating new predation sensor tags, so you can see when the tag turns red here, this is indicating it's been eaten. So we have a smolt going down the river, bam, it's eaten, and we see it works really well to identify the predation. We did a lab and field-based study. It goes down the river in the field study, it's eaten in the lake, and then the predator, sea trout, migrates out. If you don't have the predation sensor, that looks a lot like a smolt migrating, but it's actually in the belly of a sea trout. Looking at hatchery and natural recruits of Atlantic salmon in the Vosso River, really strange migration behavior. This is Cecilia's thesis work. She's submitting it this week. The hatchery fish in the fjord are moving way back and forth, whereas the wild salmon are moving right into the river very efficiently. Very different energetic costs. Some supersaturation work looking at the depth use of fish in these regulated rivers in response to supersaturation, really driven by habitat. So you can see the shallow area, very shallow depth use. Unsurprisingly, this deep area, they're going deep, not very exposed to supersaturation throughout most of the year because of the depth use. And some of the pathogen relationships between sea trout in these northern Norwegian fjords. Lots of ichthyobodo, lots of flavobacterium. Not a lot of relationships between that and their survival. And finally, we have an infrastructure proposal in for $175 million with NFR right now. We'll hear about that in a couple weeks. Trying to get acoustic telemetry arrays in some of these key fjords throughout Norway. Potential to also have these lines going out into the ocean to track smolts from other countries, connecting through some EU projects on getting highly migratory species tracked throughout the North Sea. Next 5 years, so some of the things that I'm keen to work on with Nina, hoping to work on with all of you. More cross-system work, so I mentioned some work we've done with otters, fish and mammal interactions, fish and bird interactions, predator-prey, connectivity in Europe for larger migratory species, looking at some European projects, linked telemetry to inform restoration initiatives. We're in the UN Decade on Restoration, so using this tool and applying this tool for better understanding the progress of these projects is important. Find out where the smolts are going offshore. Some of these larger lines out to the ocean will be useful, hopefully. More whole lake experiments, really interested in tracking fish in experimental contexts with whole lake work. That's all I have. I think probably I went over time. I'm sorry, I talked as fast as I can. Sorry for doing it in English. I know it was difficult to understand because I talk really quickly because I get excited because it's really cool. Talk to me later. Thank you, everybody.